We are the diaspora. We are the diaspora. We are the diaspora. We are the diaspora. My name is Megan Curie, and I am the creator of Diaspora Us podcast. Hello. And good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are tuning in from. I am so thrilled to introduce the incredible Desmond. Just to touch on a few things, Desmond and I have kind of been in cahoots for quite a few years doing our PhD together. But Desmond's work just kind of really establishes what it means to be a loud, radical Black man in today's both academic world and art world. And I'm just truly inspired by his work day in and day out. I almost can't believe we're going to graduate in the same program together. I feel pretty cool. So I knew I just had to have you on here today, Desmond. So that's my little intro spiel. I always got to fan over the folks that I'm in space with. So please, without further ado, if you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, wow. Okay, so I'm glad to be here today, Megan. This is great. I love that we are creating, making, taking space, to be heard, to be seen and affirmed, and to share what we're about and what we're making, and what we're doing. And so I am simply just this little old Black boy from the great city of Baltimore who is now living in New York City, who's making and teaching, who's also a professor at a historically Black college in Pennsylvania, who is really working, trying to affirm Black bodies, right? And these young Black thinkers and makers. And so that's who I am. I'm an artist and I'm an educator. And I'm about bringing forth one's own ideas and thoughts to the forefront and helping support people do that and helping you to find a way to articulate what's going on inside, in your heart, in your mind, in your soul. And how do we articulate that and express that? And so that's what I'm doing every day. I'm trying to move through space every day, really intentional about the things that I engage in, the things that I do, the things that I say, and the work that I'm making. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing right now in this moment. I'm trying to do.
Yes. And so given the foundation of your practice, what are then some of the political and identity topics that you do tackle within your visual artistic practice?
Well, hey, I mean, me existing is the political act, right? Being Black is the resistance, right? It is the fact that I am living is a political act. The fact that I am making work to be seen to address those issues of racism and trauma and anti-Blackness, which is what is really at the root of my work, right? I am really addressing what does generational trauma look like, feel like, and then how do we use art as a way to tackle that hurt, that pain? Because my goal is that if I do the work now, that all the generations behind me won't have to do the same work. They'll have work to do, but it won't be the same work because we are currently attacking that work now. So they can create it, right? I'm looking for liberation for all Black bodies. And so that's how I'm tackling that. I'm tackling the idea of race, what it means to deal with this idea of anti-Blackness, whether that's from the white gaze or even from the Black gaze, because I realized that it is so deep and so intrinsic, in the hearts and minds and bodies, that even for Black people, it's sometimes hard to recognize or to even want to discuss and talk about and tap into. And so the work that I'm making, whether it's through the performance-based stuff where I'm doing these blessings and healings and offerings, or if it's to the textile work where I'm quilting and using fabric and needle and thread as a way of mending hurt, right? It is that's what it's about. Like I think that I'm making the work for my grandparents, right? I'm making it work for like my grandma, who I lived my entire childhood with, my mother's mother. Like every time I make a piece, I'm thinking about her. I'm thinking about, would this speak to her? Like, would this be a love song to her soul? Would she see herself in it? Would she be affirmed in it? And would she find some healing and joy, right? Because I think about my grandmother, who died at 96, was a domestic worker. I mean, she made like 50 cents a day working in white people's homes, taking care of their children, providing a household for them. And and I think about all the dreams that she had for herself, for her own children, things she wanted to accomplish, right? The things she must have endured, things must have been said to her, you know, having only had a sixth grade education, like how that also she might have felt very limited in what she had access to, right? Every time I go into the studio, I'm making work about that. Like I'm making work that speaks to that story.
Mm,
And I'm being mindful and reminded that I'm living out her prayers, right?
yes.
That like I am the manifestation of the prayers, of the hard work. And so every time I'm in that studio and I'm stitching something together, or I'm cutting fabric up, or I'm working on a portrait of some kind, that's my meditation. So that's in the work, right? Like I talk a lot about my work not simply just being an object, but that it is sacred and it is holy and it is special, and I don't treat it like it's just an object, right? But like this object is infused with so many other things, right? It's all those thoughts that I have. So right, so my own thoughts and meditations are in the work. My grandmother's prayers are in the work. My mama's prayers are in the work, right? Like everyone who's had some hand in making me who I am,
Mm,
I think about them. Like and it makes me think, even I talk about that, like the fact that I'm in New York right now working, I love how the ancestors set you up,
yes.
because the ancestors will really conspire some things for you, right? Like the fact that like I am now a professor, right? Like my uncle, who's my mother's brother, who passed away in the early 2000s, he passed away a week after I graduated from undergrad. And the fact that I'm living like in the city he lived in for 30 years, he was a professor.
Mm,
He had his doctorate in theology, in this idea of Black liberation was what he was working in. And to have me now in the city doing similar things, right? Like I feel like I am just continuing, right? So like,
mhm.
so I'm just extending his legacy, right? Like, and I'm building my own, and we're all doing it together, right? Like, so yeah, it's weird. Like I get on the subway, and I imagine like he's sitting there with me at times, right? And I imagine like, oh, I wonder if like this is the route that he would take, right? Oh, I wonder like if these are the same neighborhoods he would hang out in, right? And then I think about, oh, well, he's here, right? Like so when I go to openings, when I have an opening, I'm like, oh, he's here today, right? Like he came to the opening tonight, So all of that just feels really connected to my practice and my process.
And I love that because for me, everything that you just spoke to, I mean, you kind of hypnotized me for a moment. I'm like, oh, I should step in and, oh, that's a good point to tackle. Oh, thank God for my elephant's brain. So I will be coming back to some of those points. I just had to let you do your sermon, which is what you also do so damn well. Like we just you don't even I don't even think you understand what you kind of just probably delivered to certain listeners. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Well,
and for me, it's so ancestral, this belief, this witnessing, this connection to those that come before us. And for me, it's also what has allowed those of us in the diaspora to continue to move the needle. And whether we know it or not, it's more powerful when we know it, and it's more powerful when we can tap into that knowing And it's more powerful when we can teach our kiddos those ways of knowing and when we can pass that on, because it's something that's been taken away from us, right? But this connection, this threading the needle, this lineage, this way of existing is so innate and to who we are as a people. So to hear you speak about it is also a gentle reminder that we do have this duty to continue the work from where we are now for the ones that come next. And it's almost like, in Yoruba faith, my father's religion is Santeria. And luckily for me, he was able to practice his Afro religion, because it's the connection to our sacred blackness, is how I call it, right? But he always says, in those religious practices, they believe in reincarnation, actually. So he says, well, you don't finish, you have to come back to do. And,
Mm.
and your ancestors will call you back. And I feel that those of us who kind of miss the mark on continuing those legacies, continuing the work, continuing those actions of resistance, we're gonna have to come back and do it, right? I do think there's something to be said about finishing and leaving something for the next generation to continue. And you said something about you're also speaking to the Black gaze, and for me that's important because I saw a quote yesterday that said, someone quoted, I forget that there are Black people that did not grow up around Black people who loved being Black.
Woo! Come on. Now that, yes.
And
Yes.
that's me.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
me. Like that
Yes.
was I always loved this color of my skin, but I'm Puerto Rican, and Puerto Ricans, like any other place molded by colonization, is inherently anti-Black. It don't matter how many Black people come from that island. Like, we are still combating anti-Blackness. So unlike some of my friends that maybe grew up like, ooh, you better get in that sun, get darker. I grew up whereas like straighten your hair, oh, do you not want to get a nose job? Like, oh, these beautiful features I once almost thought about fixing, to appease like, you know, the whiteness um in my culture. And it's because I did not have Black people around me that were like, oh God, we are so perfect the way we are. And that's something I like, that's something that I think my ancestors, and I say that all the time, they delivered me from. They were like, no, 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 no. Because I don't know how one day I just decided to cut that hair off and grow that shit back naturally. I don't know how I just decided one day that this was nonsense, but I did it on my own. And I sought out the elders. I sought out the people to look up to that look like me. I sought for it, because I did not have it. And a lot of us don't. And
Well,
so,
yeah.
and so with that, how do you then, because you spoke to it, and your work does too. So keeping that in mind, how do you feel the responsibility as a Black maker to kind of, how do you tend to those demographics of people that maybe don't know how to love the Blackness in them yet?
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. Ooh, that is something that is it's so much always in the forefront of my mind. It's in my spirit, it's in my heart when I'm thinking about this work, right? Like this, I write about this a lot in my writings that I'm speaking to the Black congregation. And the Black
Mm,
congregation is everybody who's Black. You in the diaspora, you Black. Like, I'm talking to you, right? And I want to go back to something you said, right? Growing up in a community where you were shown and taught how to love your Blackness. I am so grateful that
mhm.
I grew up in a family on my mother's side and my father's side who were blackly black people,
Yeah.
right? Like it was nothing for us to sit at the dinner table on a Saturday around the house, just chilling, talking about what it means to be Black,
Mm,
right? Talking about the beauty of being Black, and how they didn't have this language, but it is such a radical act of us existing and being that is beautiful in that, right? Like, yes, there's a struggle that we are facing because we're living in this Black skin, but oh, how fortunate and lucky we are to live in the Black skin we're in, right? And so that's really important. Like, on both sides of my family, my dad's family is in South Carolina and my mom's family is in Baltimore. And we were always told how beautiful we were,
Yep.
right? Always. Like, oh, I love that brown skin you're in. Like it was just always affirmed. And also, I grew up in a church that
Mm-hmm.
was also really important to help center that as well, because having gone to predominantly white institutions as a student, that is not what I received when I was in the classroom, right?
Uh-huh.
And so on the weekends and in evenings is when I got to go back and be in majority and be reaffirmed. So even if the world might have been saying, the world of like middle school and high school and college might have not been giving me the narrative that like I'm great the way I am,
Mm-hmm.
my family and my church home in Baltimore did that, right? Like, and so when I'm making work and I'm thinking about all those who maybe didn't grow up in that type of environment, and I think of one particular person that I hope I can share this story that like help illuminate this more. I was making work in DC, and I had met this young woman who grew up in Jersey, um, grew up, affluent, and in particular, that's different than mine. Grew up in Baltimore, right? Like growing up in West Baltimore, very different lived experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept inviting her to see my work. I kept inviting her to come to shows. I kept inviting her to come to the studio because I kept seeing there was something in her that
Yeah.
was that was yearning for this connection
Yep.
to her to find her blackness in a way, right? And so um, I remember maybe 5 years in, she decided she was leaving DC and going to grad school and all that. And she said, I just want to say thank you because you helped me to find my blackness.
That's right.
You helped me to find where
Yes.
I sit in that, right? That like, and that's true because we're not a monolith, right? Like we
Yes.
all have the ways in which we experience our blackness and express it, but she was coming to a point of like she felt like she didn't have the permission to express it because she had been in white spaces for so long that the way she wanted to express her blackness just wasn't there, right? And so she was like, but thank you for that because the way you speak about your blackness, the way you show up in space, the way in which um, you require people to interact with you and to speak to you, the work that you're making is letting me see myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's letting me see who I am. And so I'm also thinking about that conversation I had with that particular person. I'm in the studio.
Yeah.
How do I make a piece that really speaks to the core of what I feel?
Yeah.
Um, but how do I get to somebody who hasn't had my same experiences? Because you said I like preaching, right? Like this idea of delivering sermons to the Black congregation
Mm-hmm.
and being an educator, I want to make sure it's accessible to everybody. And I
Yeah.
gotta find the ways to tap into as many people as I can for them to see themselves in the work, right? And I had someone tell me at a gallery that they had seen the work online, advertising a show, but when they came to the space, they were not prepared for how they were going to feel once they walked into the gallery. And this was up in Connecticut, like in this small little town. And the person was like, I walked in and felt like I was into it. I walked into a sanctuary. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I had walked into a sacred space and it was created for all of us, but particularly for Black people, that I walked in and felt so affirmed in my Blackness that I did not expect. And that to me is just affirming that the work that I'm doing, that it's real, right? Like that's why I keep going back to this idea that it is not that this is not about creating objects for people to view and hang on a wall or put into their collection, but it is meant to have people have an intimate response, reaction that helps them reflect on themselves, right? And so I'm thinking about that and making it work. So I'm thinking about that person that I met in DC. I'm thinking about how do I, as an educator, right? Because that's who I am as well, to the core of like when I'm trying to present an idea or lesson, how do I present it so all the learners in the room can access it? How
Yeah.
can they all glean something from it? And not the exact same thing, because I don't want everybody to walk away with the same idea. I want everybody to walk away with their own idea of it
Mhm.
all, right? And so I just think about when I was in Baltimore at my church, Mount Lebanon, like,
Whoop whoop, Mount Leb.
right, Mount Lebanon, like how I just felt affirmed there, right? And how can people feel the same way that I felt um, by going to that church where my pastor was like this radical
Mhm.
preacher talking about Black liberation and us
Mhm.
being free and how we gonna get free,
And
all of
and
that.
Desmond, it's important because I also know that there's so much trauma in relationship to our faiths in the Black community
Ah,
because it is still a religion brought to us by the white
right,
colonizer, right?
right, right.
And so we were taught religion in the way that they wanted us to receive their God, because their God apparently said slavery was allowed and acceptable and okay. And we all know that that God doesn't exist,
Right,
but that's
right.
the God that many of us have been contending with. And so I think it's also, it speaks to an important narrative. That's why that, in my eyes, that's why that person was blown away, because I think there's an eagerness and like a starvation within so many of us to connect to something above us. And we deserve that. We deserve to have that faith reaffirmed by good leaders and good faith leaders. and and however that can come in a myriad of ways, right? For me, you are doing that work, and I'm
Yeah.
curious to see where your future will take you in that line. But speaking it out.
Yeah.
But it's important because we deserve to fix that trauma, and we deserve to have that connection to faith, that connection to God, that connection to something greater and higher than us. And for many of us, that's been ripped from us, in place of an institutions that continue to perpetuate white supremacy and anti-black violence. If we're going to be honest.
Listen, and that's what I'm telling you, like how the ancestors set you up.
Yes.
Because here I am using the tool that they thought they would use to keep us in control and in line. And now, as Black people have done throughout time, I'm gonna take the master's tools and reuse them against you. And now here I am decolonizing this idea of Christianity and what it means within the Black body and spaces to use it as a form of liberation. Like,
Yes.
let me use that thing they tried to keep us in line with to liberate us, right? Like, and yes, there's a whole lineage of this idea of Black liberation theology, but there's also something about being so aware of how do I tap into that spirituality, that higher calling being that will help guide me
Uh,
to say things, to move in spaces, to create things that will initiate your healing and your liberation, right?
yes.
Because I can't liberate you. You gotta liberate yourself, right? Like, but what I can do is hopefully present you with enough things to think about, enough opportunities for you to begin to investigate for yourself so you can find your own freedom in that, right? Because I want us all to be free. If you Black, I want you to be free and you gotta come along with me. Like, I can't leave you behind. Like,
Yes.
it's not in me. Like, I can't get my freedom and keep moving and go,
Yes.
but Megan, you ain't free. No, well,
Yes.
I can't leave you. I'm gonna keep talking to you. I'm gonna keep making work. And I think that is the thing, right? That's why I'm still making work and I'm constantly making work because that piece didn't get you, but the next piece might get you. Oh, this performance piece didn't get you. Maybe this next one will get you, right? I have to
Mhm.
constantly keep working at it because I want everybody to be free.
And you know what, Desmond? You give me more chills because even in this moment that we're in, I'm watching so many of my people, our people, you know, I know that it's a matter of like you're missing the tools. I know that you're missing the tools. And one thing I do, I give Black folks grace when it
Hmm.
comes to navigating systems. I give them grace. I'm always put my arm out. Um, and I think because it's about love, like I just love Black people so much that for me, I can't settle with the you're too far gone. I can't. I
Mm-mm.
refuse. Um, I might get disappointed. I might get pissed. I might cuss you out. I might say a few
Exactly.
things. And then when I cool down, the other Gemini is gonna come back and and take over, and we're gonna keep moving it because, and that's the thing about us and our people. Like who we are is so rooted in love, and
Yeah.
that's what drives what we do. And
Yes.
yeah, we can't be
And
living.
like I need you as much as you need me. Right? Like
Yes,
I cannot exist without you. Right? Like and because my being, my breathing, my existence is connected to you, there's no way that I can move on without you coming with me. Right. And so and that's why like I think about it so broadly that I'm talking about everybody in the diaspora, like not just those of us in the US, not
yes,
like everybody, because this thing of white supremacy is so insidious. It is so mind altering, just will have you all confused and lost.
yes,
The sense of who you are, the grace in me, the compassion in me says, boo, you don't know. Like, you don't know how much you have been indoctrinated in this way of thinking that you hold these values about yourself, right? Like, or about other groups that look like you,
uh-huh,
right? And so I can't give up on you.
yeah,
And I gotta keep talking to you and I gotta keep making the work because I keep saying it. We all gotta be free,
yeah,
you know? And
and
like,
yeah, ugh,
and
insidious.
what's and thing that's so funny about like the shift in my work that really I knew I was like walking in my calling was for years and years and years and years I was making work out of anger
Mm,
at the white gaze and like trying to show them how horrible they are and show them their lack of humanity and
hmm.
all of that. And then one day the ancestors was like, that's not your work no more.
Gotta let it go.
That's
Mm,
not your work no more.
hmm.
Focus that same amount of energy and intentions towards us,
Mm,
towards yourself,
ooh,
towards your own healing. So now I don't make work that because I would have said to you, oh yeah, I'm trying to have a conversation with white people in the gallery. I want to engage with them in this level to like understand why they do the things they do. That ain't it no more. Like white people come to the gallery, think it's a beautiful piece on the wall, love it. Oh, it's pretty, love it. But what I want is that black person to walk in, and I want us to have the conversation. I want us to connect in a way that only we understand what's happening in this moment, right? Because that's what my assignment is now. My assignment now is to make work directed to our healing, and that's my biggest focus. Like I don't have time to be trying to convince white people anymore
yep,
to be better,
exactly.
to do better.
Yes. Hello, snaps.
I
We
can't do that no more,
yeah, that's it.
you know,
Yep, 100%.
because
It's soul sucking. It's
yeah,
like, and I
yeah.
think our ancestors are telling us like that's they've been waking us up in our sleep to be like, "Psst, nah, no, ain't it. You tried, move on." And you know
Yeah,
what? I got plenty of white friends, like plenty, who be doing the work. So I know that you can do the work.
exactly.
And what we need is to take that energy, as you said, and pour that love back into our community because our community deserves
Hmm.
infinite amount of loving and healing. And we've
Yep.
been using that energy to convince violent folks, not all, I'm being specific, violent folks. So that's that wall we've been going back and forth with. Like, hello, can you hear us? Like, that's violence. And
Yeah.
we've been loving on violence when there's people that just are in need of that. And I think that's an important reminder. Like, listen, good, you like it? Great. Come along for the ride. We always use like some liaisons in certain communities, but we all need to just focus more on healing because we do so much with so little as it is.
Right.
So if you
Right.
just put that back into us, like the possibility of greatness is infinite,
Right.
and we've
And
been
yeah. And our survival depends on it. Like
yes,
our survival as black people it. it is so tied to our healing and liberation of all the all
Of all.
of
That's the
all,
thing.
all of it,
Of
all of it,
all.
of all, of all,
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
all. But, you know, which is again, I go back to the idea of like the grace, right? Like we as a people have endured so much, but are
Mm.
still standing. So what does that
Yes.
say about us?
Yes.
That says that we are great. That says that like there is something about us that no matter what is thrown at us, we are going to stand. I
Yeah.
will be there in the morning. Like,
And we're gonna always stand for everyone else. And that's the crazy.
yes. And that's the thing. And that's the thing that like despite what we've been through, we still want to liberate everybody else as well.
Yes. Yes. Like every movement in the
Yeah.
world led by us includes the
Yeah.
rest of y'all.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
if that doesn't tell you, I don't, yeah. And with that, I think that's a great place. Um, what are you currently working on? What comes next? And what inspiring notes do you have for our people
Oh.
who want to join any one of these fields, or who just want something?
Yeah. So I would say what's next is my continuing of just making the work that I
Mm.
am called to make, right? And to go into spaces and to transform them into spaces where we can be seen and affirmed in a way that hasn't happened before, right? And and no longer am I trying to seek to like tear down and like shoehorn my way into spaces that were never meant for me to be in. Because if that happens, that happens. Like I'll get access to those spaces,
Yep.
but I'm gonna go to where the people are, so they can get what they need, right? And so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to find ways to do that. I'm still trying to find all the creative ways that I can make the work that will be seen by as many people as possible, as many Black people. You know, like I just saw that like somebody shared some of my work over in um the Netherlands or whatever. I was like, okay, I don't have Black people over in the Netherlands, but okay, hope somebody over there Black sees it, you know, and will,
One of our Ethiopian brothers and
you
sisters
know,
in the diaspora
somebody
gets their
like
eyes on it. That's
we
right.
everywhere, we everywhere. So I hope you saw it. I hope that it was shared so that you could see it, right? So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on like these new ideas and bodies of work that will involve community participation in a way, you know, that like I want us to come together and make together, right? Like I am taking on more of a social practice now to the work, as well. And so I'm looking for ways to collaborate with
Mm.
other makers and those who don't consider themselves artists, right? Those who don't even have never thought about trying to make anything, right? I want them to come as well, right? Like
Yes.
I want to find space and
Those
time
are
to do,
prime, those are prime folks right there.
you know, like they are, right? And because I'm telling you, I'm thinking about like my younger brother.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about all of his friends. I'm thinking about my godchildren who are like in their 20s and like all their friends. Like, I want all y'all now to come and like make with me. You know, I want us to like spend time in the studio. Let's spend time in the neighborhood, like working together and like doing stuff, right? Because that's what I think that's the next stage of the work, right? Like, is to take this work really to the people where they are and like let's engage in it, right? Not force it on you, not like make you do the work, but like present you with an invitation to
Mm.
come, right? Which is like what I guess I would say, right? To what I want to leave with people is here's an invitation to your healing. Come join us in it.
Mm.
Come join us in the liberation. Come join us in dealing with those things that have you so hurt that you talk to no one about it. The
Mm.
things that make you feel unseen, the
Mm.
things that make you feel unloved. Come get your healing.
Yeah.
Come, come. Let's do the work together. There is a community of people that are waiting for you, right?
Ooh.
Like I have been waiting for you, right? And so I need you and you need me. I need to see you. I need to know you. I need to put my face in your face. I need to put my cheek next to your cheek. Like, we need to have that level of connection and intimacy. Like, that is something that I think that there's so much that I'm thinking about, take like the transatlantic slave trade and all that it did to our sense of being and our psyche. I think that we were so afraid to just relax
Mm,
and to just give ourselves because of the fear of not knowing what our next day would look like, to
mm.
not know if I would see you again tomorrow, to not know if I was going to make it to tomorrow. And so because of that, we've put a barrier up, right, that we can access fully. And I want us to start to break that down so that when you see me, we can embrace. So that when you see me, we can exhale together. So that when you see me, we can walk side by side. Like, I can hold you up, you can hold me up. I want us to do that work because we deserve it.
Yep.
We deserve it. You deserve to relax. You deserve to have rest. You deserve to be loved. You deserve it. And the last thing I would say about that is that when you do that, you honor yourself and you honor the ancestors. You honor the ancestors because they didn't go through all of that
Yeah.
for you to be in the present day moment not loving yourself and
Mm,
not loving others. They said, I'm going to take all of this on, all this oppression, all this hurt. But with that, I'm going to also send some joy to you as well in the future as well.
yep.
You know? Because and that's the thing, right? As people, we are so joyous. There's so much joy in us.
And we're so
If,
funny. Oh,
yeah. If we would just let ourselves accept the joy and be willing to express the joy. That's what it is. That's what
Desmond, you got me crying over here.
it is.
I hope you awaken
Oh,
that in whoever is honored and privileged to be privy to this conversation. Like I said, big fan. Lucky to know you.
no, I'm a
Lucky,
big fan of you. I'm a big fan of you.
lucky to be rolling together in all of this. And I was not expecting this to be as magical, but I really feel like that's who you are. I feel like I'm excited to see what route you take with this because I feel that your work is to it's to preach, it's to lead, it's to change lives. And you're just scratching the surface. That's the crazy part. I know that, and I've known you for like 5 years now. And I know I'm like, damn, this is just the beginning. So with that being said, thank you for
Oh,
being
thank
with
you.
us today. And ooh, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing and providing this space for us to have dialogue. Because
Yeah,
this is also the healing work.
yeah,
You are doing the healing work by having this platform.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We are the diaspora.